The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast, broadcasting live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. This week and every week, we will reach for a higher purpose in money and life, as well as a focus on health and wellness. Now, let's join your host, Bonita Bell-Andersen, as together we start with Asking Good Questions.
Hello and welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast. And I hope that we are going to have a fantastic time today because we have a guest that we're going to talk about a very important topic today. I'm your host, Bonita Bell-Andersen, and I'd like to invite my guest, Raymond Lavine, to the proverbial podcast stage. Welcome, Raymond.
I think I got.
You're good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I don't know if you can edit that out. My screen went out, so my apologies.
Oh boy. Okay. No, you're here. I'm seeing you. We're all seeing you. So this is Raymond Lavine. He is actually in my neck of the woods. Normally, I'm actually still in Hawaii for another couple months, but he's actually in Washington State, which is where I'm from. And so let me tell you a little bit about Raymond. He turned out to be someone I met that is very passionate about long-term care. Yes, long-term care. And he wants to talk to people about caregiving plans that they really have, they're just not, this is not on their radar. It should be, maybe an individual benefit or something that an employer should be providing. The challenge is that Raymond says is that long-term care benefits are seldom understood. I agree, or advocated for by benefits or property casualty brokers, let alone financial advisors like me. He thinks that those a lot of times it can be seen as a benefit, like for a middle class or middle income benefit, and also that the affluent don't need it because they have sufficient funds. Well, that's just not the case in a lot of times. So the illusion is that there's going to be adequate funds available. So today with Raymond, we are going to break down the choices that families actually face. And we have both been through this. I have had several long-term care scenarios in my own family. Raymond has as well. And the strategies, we're going to really be talking to you about the strategies that help you keep dignity and control somewhat. And that this episode is going to help you replace uncertainty with a practical plan. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. We're going to ask some good questions today, Raymond. So Raymond, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes. Can we do a reel of you to promote me before I talk to anyone? That I'll have you as my real spokesperson.
Sure, you bet. We can talk about that later.
Fair enough.
You can just show them this episode of the podcast. So Raymond, like in the little description for this podcast episode, we talked about a caregiving plan. Well, what do you mean? What are the core parts that every family should be aware of?
Well, let's start off with what is caregiving. And it's a term that people often are in, but they don't know it. But what is caregiving? What does it mean? Well, when you're a parent, caregiving means you're taking care of your children. Sometimes it's also taking care of your spouse, but that's a different topic. But caregiving, by definition of the insurance company, is activities of daily living. What does that mean? Well, it means that something has happened where you need caregiving because it's not the illness or the accident or the frailty that you need caregiving by the insurance definition. It's activities of daily living. So sort of getting into insurance terminology, but it really means that somebody needs to help another person with various activities, meaning eating, bathing, dressing, transitioning. It may be a cognitive, but like in the infomercial, but there's more, because caregiving isn't just doing something for somebody. There's more, because there are three things that in fact, actually, I got another term today. I was reading about it. Is that I've been saying that when you need caregiving, there are two things that happen to a person, and it doesn't matter age, it doesn't matter how well educated you are, how much education you have, it doesn't matter about how affluent. There are three things that most people in most cultures want and need. One is people want attention, especially if you need caregiving. You want somebody to pay attention to you. And if you don't believe me, go into a restaurant and don't have anybody come to your table. You're going to find, people will complain. It's called attention. I just thought I'd give a visual example. The other thing that I think happens is that nobody wants to feel invisible, and it's sort of intention too. You don't want to be invisible. And the third part of this, if you want to call it the stool, has to do with people don't want to feel vulnerable. And I'll give you, an example. Christopher Reeves, the actor, was vibrant. He was 6'4", good looking, making money, making pictures, falls off a horse. He's paralyzed. You think that Christopher Reeves felt vulnerable? Yeah. Yes, he felt vulnerable. He had to have family and friends to help me, and Robin Williams to call him. They were roommates in New York, Juilliard. Side story, but the point is that Robin Williams would call him to motivate him and give him mental health. But here's somebody that went from riding a horse, falling off, feeling vulnerable. So no matter how famous you are, how wealthy you are, if you are in a healthcare situation, you are vulnerable, and nobody wants to feel like that. So what do? Is that I don't get involved in caregiving, although I've had, caregiving situations. In fact, actually, in the next couple of months, my wife is going to need knee surgery. So there's going to be a lot of caregiving going on. Mm-hmm. But what I do, and people say, well, he sells insurance. Well, yeah, I sell a specific kind of insurance. But why should anybody think about it? Because I provide the money so that families can pay for caregiving services, so that the family doesn't have to be fully involved in the caregiving and all the responsibility. Because there's a lot of other responsibility. People just think, as I said, caregiving is just doing stuff. Well, it's more than that, because you may have to take care of somebody's finances, administration, driving, making phone calls for prescriptions. If I'm going on and you want to stop, ask me another question, because I could get.
Well, what I want to ask you. That's a great example. What do you think? Do you feel like there's like hope and pray assumptions that you hear from families about long-term care that are like not wanting to address it, and they're just like, oh, I hope that we can. What do you hear people say when they're like given excuses about not dealing with this?
Well, it's like the person going to the library. that wants to find out about the Nile River, and the librarian gets a stack of books, and the student says, "I don't need that much information." But for a lot of people, they're in denial, and denial is, I'll hope, something, it'll all work out well. I'll die fast. I'll do all these, hope for, and hope is not a strategy, and hope is not a solution. Yeah. It's just, you hope that, and in reality, it's nice to have hope. It's nice to say, "Oh, I did all these wonderful things," being a caregiver, but there's a lot of emotion in it. There's a lot of expense, and there's a lot of, people also think about it. When we think of caregiving, you always think of the person that needs the caregiving, and we often forget the people that are involved in caregiving. There's a lot of drama, there's a lot of expense, and there's a lot of mental health and physical health for the caregiver. And if you don't have the resources to, then your responsibility, and it can be devastating for those that need caregiving and those that will be caregivers. Right. That's why I'm an advocate, or if we can say on the podcast, that's why I'm a pain in the ass about this, is that, it's really, it's as up close and personal as you're ever going to get. And I'll keep this family. It's as close and personal as intimacy or childbirth or, hugging. Yep. It couldn't get more. It couldn't get more personal.
I remember when I was caring for my sister.
Rated. Am I still G-rated? I hope.
Oh, it is. It is. But I was just thinking, I'm remembering with my own sister, who she's been gone now for about 6 years. But I remember one day that when I was caring for her, and she looked at me and shook her head and said, "I never thought it would be like this."
That's right.
It was just sad. It was just sad, and it was just hard on all of us. But talk to me about, your own family. I think you had some caregiving with your parents. So what was the moment when you realized that this planning can change everything?
Well, my parents were lawyers, and they were knowledgeable people about a lot of things. Yeah. But they weren't insurance buyers other than what they needed to buy. They weren't, they didn't, yeah. When I say that, I mean, it's not like they bought, a lot of extra insurance for things, because the usual term is, "I don't want to be insurance poor." And that's reasonable. You don't want to buy more of different things because somebody scares you into it. They used to be like cancer insurance, or, there are a lot of, specific things that you can buy. But it's like buying, saying you buy a refrigerator. Do you get a warranty? The point that I'm making on this is that the best investment that you can make is to invest in yourself. And with my parents, they didn't do that until till it was towards the end. And what I mean by that is, my father 3 times in his life, actually my mother died at 103. And I'll get back to it. She bought a long-term care plan, and they did, and they tried to buy it in their 70s after my father had his third and this was the final illness, and took him about 2.5, 3 years to die. But at that point, through the Bar Association, they got offered long-term care benefits, and I think that by then my parents got the plot. Meaning 2 times before, he had been in a car accident, and he hurt his back severely, and he was out for months. And then the second time, he fell off a horse and broke his hip and his arm, and he was out for 1.5 years. And my mother had a thriving estate planning practice, and each time they didn't hire caregivers, she was the caregiver. So she spent time away from her practice. And you
would think, wouldn't you think that they would do, of all people, right?
Well, you don't ask your parents that. It's just, it's like they'll say it vice versa, but you usually don't say it back to your parents. Like, well, why didn't you do that? But a side story, one of the things even I believed until, in the last maybe 20 years is that most people think of caregiving as nursing home insurance or assisted living. And most people thought, why do I want to buy a nursing home policy? Yeah. I don't want to be in a nursing home. But the fact is that caregiving plans, long-term caregiving plans, have evolved a lot. There have been problems with it over time with premium increases. We can go into that if you want to later. But long-term care plans are comprehensive now. You can either you buy it and you can either be at home, which is what most people want, but it may be that you need to go to a care center called nursing home assisted living. Why? Well, depends on, where you live, how you're living. Do you have, what kind of care do you need? And sometimes it might be, there is a good reason to be in a care center. Now, I will never go to a care center because I can't, and be honest with you, I can never be in a homeowners association because I'll get expelled. I just have that. I have that personality. So if I'm going to need caregiving, I'm going to have to be at home because no care center will take me. And it's not because I'm not a pleasant person. I just have a personality. But anyway, the point is with my parents, my mother was able to get long-term care benefits, and my father couldn't because he had a pre-existing condition. Yeah. My mother used it for 18 years, and as I think I told you when we spoke before, is that my mother was very affluent, and she made several million a year. So I asked my mother, why did you buy it? You're making this money? Because this is a thing of, well, I'll self-fund, I'll self-insure. And my mother, being, again, a estate planning attorney, said, nobody has that much money to pay for their lifestyle and their care services. Because my mother is sort of the classic case of, she started off, with maybe 10 to 20 hours a week of a caregiver. And eventually it became 24 hours a day, 2 or 3 shifts, 7 days a week. And so I tell people, do you really want to spend, it used to be, you'd pay somebody $15, $20 an hour. It's now, maybe $30, $40, $50 an hour. So if you do it $50 an hour times 24 times 7 times 30 times 12, do the arithmetic, it's expensive.
Yeah. Well, let's dial this back. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around Medicare because, most people past 65 are going to have some form of Medicare. What does it typically cover, and what can you help people understand that it doesn't cover when it comes to extended care?
Medicare is health insurance. And this is also where people don't know, or as John Kennedy said, they don't want to know, or they don't understand. And I'm not saying that to be condescending or dismissive, because when I was looking into Medicare for myself, it's astonishing. It took me a while and a lot of YouTube things to understand about Medicare. And also, the difference between a Medicare supplement and a Medicare Advantage plan and what the difference is. And it may seem simple, but it's not as simple. You really have to understand it, but and spend time internalizing it. Medicare is a health insurance plan for seniors. And it goes back to when Harry Truman in 1948 suggested Medicare, and it didn't happen until 1965. It is health insurance. And it's not socialized medicine. It's actually an entitlement program. It is designed for people 65 and older to have healthcare insurance, which pays for your doctor and it pays for your hospital. Then you buy the supplemental plan to pay for what Medicare doesn't pay in services. Now, Medicare, if you need caregiving services because of surgery or some sort of after surgery or rehabilitation, Medicare will pay a certain amount, for caregivers to come in for
amount of days.
But only for so long. How about if I say that it's recovery? It's recovery benefits.
Yeah,
they pay for
that's a good way to
recovery
say it.
short term. Now, that's Medicare, and it will. And it'll also pay for hospice. When you're actively dying, and the idea is, you're actively dying within 6 months. Medicare will pay for hospice, and many people have had very good, if you can say that, very good experiences, with hospice care.
What's that word, Raymond?
That's sort of a cognitive dissonance of hi.
I know. I was like, really?
Exactly, but. But long-term care benefits was designed to pay for the longer term when all the other social services aren't available, that you had money to pay for. And again, it was, started with nursing home insurance, but now it's, comprehensive. And, look, in 40 years, there's a lot. Unlike life insurance, there's a lot that the insurance companies have learned about long-term care benefits. They've made some serious mistakes with the plan. And what I regret and what happens is people's memory, or the way people write about it, a lot of times they'll write negatively, like, it was such a good plan, but now there have been premium increases and there have been benefit changes, and so it's awful. Well, real estate market has had problems, but I don't notice people not saying, I never want to buy a home. I never want to own real estate.
Right.
Or
banks. Have you? I mean, you've seen the studies, like I'm sure I have, where they tell you, and it's very scary, but how likely is it that someone's going to need this long-term care? And what ages do you most often see it starting? What do you think?
What most people think is that you're going to need it in your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. In other words, when you're old, when you're perceived as old, that then you'll need the caregiving benefits. It's likely, however, people in their, at any age,
could be from an accident.
An accident, an illness, and diabetes, stroke, heart attack, cognitive issues. There can be, early age dementia. I don't want to just say Alzheimer's because but you can have a cognitive. Here's another thing that people don't think. There are a lot of people that have neurological diseases, MS or other neurological diseases. People can get severe arthritis. So there are a lot of healthcare issues or something in the DNA that you may need caregiving services at a much younger age. Now, here's the other thing: is that people are, Americans are living longer. If you look at the statistics, the girls live longer. I'm not always sure if that's really going to happen. If the boys will catch up or the girls will, not live as long. But the assumption is that women live, or the girls live longer than the men. So therefore, let's calculate. But however, people are living longer. That doesn't mean they're living with better health. Right.
Yeah. I definitely want to have the better health part.
I do too. And however, even if you need caregiving, even if you're not healthy, I want to give, some positive things about this, is that just because you're not healthy and you won't have a caregiving plan, whatever it means, you have a reverse mortgage, you sell your life insurance, you get money, you take money out of your, however you do it. My concern is you can still have a good life. You really can. And I mean, I've seen this personally. You can still have, a life where you're not invisible, you don't worry about attention, and you don't feel as vulnerable. You can go out and do things. And I see this every day when I go out. I see people, canes, walkers, wheelchairs. They have the oxygen things. For whatever reason, living in Washington State, somehow older people, caught up where I see all these people. Of course, being in this business, I become more observant. I become more aware, and in that sense, I'm really gratified that I'm in the business I'm in because it's given me, it's helped me to understand not only in myself and my family, but what other, to observe what other people are going through. So it's made me, I think, a better person and more empathetic.
Well, what do you think? We kind of mentioned this at the beginning about affluent people. And I think, affluent families can get blindsided. What's the illusion around we'll just pay out of pocket?
Taxes. Meaning, and I may think is if you have to use there's nothing in the IRS code that I'm aware that if you're using your income or your assets to pay for caregiving, there's no tax benefit. There's no tax incentive. So what you're putting in, you're paying a double expense, or an added expense. One is your lifestyle. The utility bills don't stop because you have, or the utility say, oh, you caregiving. Oh, well, you don't have to pay utilities. You don't have to pay your property taxes. You do.
Yeah,
so
all those continue.
Exactly. So the expenses continue. However, now you're adding an expense, not an asset, but an expense of if your spouse is actively working or retired, whatever the situation may be, that it's, is your spouse, if you have one, are they be able to help you? If you have children, do you really want your children to give up their careers and families who are suspended? And they will, but there's an expense. So you're going from whatever income you're making and add 30, 40, 50% to that. Can you handle the lifestyle and the extra expense? Even if you, whether you say I have several million in assets, it's what are the assets producing? And caregiving expenses, if you think, whatever your feelings are about inflation, is that inflation in caregiving is a lot higher than everything else. It's going up incrementally. Caregiving is expensive.
Well, I am working with a long time client, someone that has been with me for a very long time, and she's a retired pharmacist. She has just put her husband into memory care. So, and this is going to cost her about $10,000 a month, and all of her other expenses are still continuing. And it's sad and it's emotional, and all the things with losing your partner. It's I don't know. I mean, what do you think most shock families the most once care is needed? What do you think?
Everything. Your life, when there's an illness or accident, everything changes. I mean, you use the metaphor, it's a light switch. Your life will change. When I had I've had 2 heart attacks. I guarantee you, it affected my life, instantaneously, and of course my family, because if you're not prepared, and many people aren't, then there are a lot of things that you're going to have to do in your life that, if you're not prepared, it's not only stressful for those that have whatever issue they have, but for the family, because there are things you got to find out. What prescriptions are you taking? What's your social security number? Do you have your health card? What powers of attorney? What passwords? Who's your doctor? Does your family know who your doctors are? Do you know the phone numbers? There are so many things besides, somebody isn't well. Is that it's information. They're all going to ask for information, and I guarantee you they're all going to say, do you have insurance? They're all going to say, do you have insurance, or how's your credit card balance?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the kids for a minute here. What happens to an adult child's finances when there's no plan? And I'm thinking about retirement and college funding and their career and their marriage. What are your thoughts about those adult children that get involved in this?
Any study that you will find, and you can, find your own study, they all say the same thing. Cause I read about this stuff every day. Is that if children are involved, there've been, movies that have been done about this, and television shows, it's dramatized, but, it tells the story of, it's devastating to everyone, because if you have to take care of, do you live across the street? Families, 100 years ago, they were families. They lived in the same community. 2026 is things are different. People don't always live in the same area. A lot of times they don't even live in the same state for various reasons. And of course, it also depends on marital status. Some people are, on 2 or 3 families. So the point is that if your children don't live nearby, if they have to drive, I don't notice the gas station say, "Oh, you're going to see your parents for caregiving. Oh, it's free." There's going to be, or if you have to fly, you might say, "Oh, I have a hardship. Maybe they'll give you some sort of discount." But the point is that if a child has to go and visit the parent, then,
which happens a lot,
and there's expense, but there's more. Is that you're coming into a situation of you don't know how long, if you're not aware of what their situation. Have they been paying their bills? How have they been eating? What's the condition of where?
I've seen that too.
Yeah, where they're living. Are the the parents been bathing? Have they been eating? And you can open up the refrigerator. If it has expiration 2020, you're in serious trouble. But here's the thing that the people will call me and say, "Can you help me? I don't know where their financial papers are. I don't know where their health insurance goes." They don't know where their documents are.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, let's get into some action things. I always like to have people, have something that they can take away. If a listener wants to, like, quote unquote, own a caregiving plan or start going down this road, what are the first 3 steps that you'd have them take this month?
There are a number of things. If you have, if you want to talk to somebody like me, I'll be authentic. The first thing I'm going to ask you, if they want to think and know about getting a caregiving plan, the first question I'll ask is, what do you want your caregiving plan to do? Not, "Oh, we have this plan and this plan and this plan, we can do this and this." I want to find out what is important about caregiving. What do you want your caregiving plan to do? And there are 3 things that I say is that where do you want your caregiving? If you needed caregiving, just like, where do you want your caregiving? Most people say, "Well, I want it at home." The family might say, "Right. Well, we want them to go to a care center." The second thing is, I ask, who do you want to be responsible for your caregiving? who's out there. You like your kids, they like you. Are you going to, or family or friends, who is capable of doing caregiving for you? Because they've got to think about it. And here's the other thing: is people have to visualize. I mean, it isn't just telling people. You really got to visualize. Do you really, this is what you're going to ask your kids to do. Is that what you really want? Do you want them to really bathe you? Yeah. Really, can they lift you? Do you really want them to look here? They may have to do your finance. You want them to see their finances. And the third question that I ask is, how are you going to pay for it? What resources do you have? And people will say, well, I can pay for a year on my own. And I'll say, well, so you're okay with spending $6,000 a month, $7,000? Oh yeah. So well, what happens if it goes?
How about 10? That client I just talked about is going to be $10,000 a month.
And it may be, that it's later on. Again, it depends on the situation. Sometimes it's incremental. Sometimes it's the wham bam, meaning, you need this, and this is this, and this is what it costs. But you see, there's the other things. What is $10,000? What's it going to get you? Is it going to really get you well? Here. Let me say it this way. When I ask people, how much attention do you want if you needed caregiving? And I'll say, the question I'll ask is, you know what the ratio is for attention if you're at home versus if you're in a care center? And they say, I don't know. So if you're at home, the attention, if you have some, is at least 1-to-1, good ratio. You might have 2 or 3 or 4-to-1, even better ratio. Now, if you're in a care center, depending on, do you have a really fancy schmancy one, or do you have, sort of the regular care center? So it might be the attention is prompt, or it might be 1 to 15, 1 to 20, and if they're all needy, or they all need attention, do you really think you're going to get attention fast? So what does 10,000 mean? It depends. I would just tell you personally, it depends on what attention you need. And obviously, here's the other thing, and I'm saying it, quickly, maybe, more information, but it depends also on what things, if you're, needing the caregiver, how much attention do you need? Maybe there's a lot of things you can do yourself, but as time goes on, that you need more attention. There are more things that need to be done. And so therefore, it's either, if you're at home, there are more things that people need to do, or you need to bring in people because you need, if you need oxygen, or if you're getting prescriptions and stuff, or therapy, maybe, you can hire people to come in, or you can take somebody. One way or another, you have to have somebody else, help help you.
Well, so Raymond, I'm wondering about, there might be, I'm guessing there might be some out there that are saying, but I can't qualify medically, or they can't afford traditional long-term care insurance. What alternatives are you going to say? What would you, if someone's telling you that, what would you say? What alternatives are there?
Okay, some of the basic reverse mortgage, and I'm not opposed to if you own a home and you have assets, a reverse mortgage might be a good idea. What I would also say is that if you want to keep it, then buy, and if you can, buy a life insurance policy, so that it will pay off the reverse mortgage. So if you want to leave your home as a legacy, buy a life insurance policy. Obviously, most people say, well, they'll buy a term policy, or depending what it is, a cash value. So reverse mortgage, might be a benefit. If you own life insurance is if it's convertible, or if you own cash value, then ask me. I'll get you a life, sell your life insurance. In fact, let me also just say, if you own life insurance and don't let it lapse, and don't sell it to a life settlement and get and get cash. So don't sell your life insurance, and don't let it lapse, because that'll let people, I'll let it lapse, or I'll just turn it in. Sell it if you can. Another way you could another thing, if you have no asset, is Medicaid. Now, you might be eligible. Here's the thing: people think that they're entitled. You're not. You're eligible, but you're not entitled because you have to have certain qualifications. So I might feel I'm entitled to things. The reality is, that you're eligible, and you have to be. And just because, and if you want to do it before and you want to transfer assets, I say to people, well, I'll just let Medicaid, but I'll transfer my assets. I said, fine, then talk to an elder care attorney, pay $15,000 or whatever, because they're going to charge for the services. Do you really want to, you really want to transfer your asset? All right, then Medicaid, or transfer the asset. Now, here's if you have an annuity, or if you have assets not really needed for retirement benefits, even if you have pretty lousy health or almost no health, I can still get you a plan. You transfer the assets to an annuity that has long-term care provision to it. Now, here's the thing. And people say, well, supposing, at least it needs at least 100,000. I'll go through this quickly. 100,000. Then it will leverage. It might be 2 or 3. So the 100,000 really becomes 200,000 or 300,000. Then somebody will say, well, if I put it in there, I'll lose my money. It'll go to money heaven. No, it won't. I mean, it might if you use it enough. But if you don't use all the benefits, then the assets that are left in the annuity will go tax-free to a beneficiary. So you're either using it or beneficiary, but you're really not losing it. It's not and it's not fraud, and it's not a scam. I mean, it's a real thing.
No, I agree with you on this.
Yeah.
Raymond, can you believe we're almost out of time? This always goes so fast. So we need to close. I want to have some clarity around how people can move forward. So if someone listening today is doing nothing, but we've convinced them to get going on this, what's the single most important action they could take in the next 7 days to reduce this risk and maybe hopefully regain some peace of mind? What would be the single best thing they could do?
The best thing they can do, obviously, is talk to a person that's involved with long-term care benefits. However, the reality is, if you have a financial planner, if you have a wealth advisor, if you have family and friends that you like, ask them, what's your caregiving plan, or what have you done about it, or what do you know about it, and who would you recommend? So ask wealth advisor, financial planners, accountants, people, elder care attorneys. Ask them, do they advocate, caregiving planning, and how, and what do they advise? So talk to the people that you know and trust. What are they thinking about it? What do they advocate, and who should they be talking to?
Right. So with that, I think we've asked some good questions. I think that we've talked about some important things that people could take action on. Do you have any final thoughts for us today, Raymond?
Well, the only other thought I have, and we've talked about a lot of really, you've really asked some really great questions and really brought out sometimes things to me that I think about, but I don't always say, is that I would also encourage people to ask their employer, do you, as part of an employee benefit, do you have a long-term care plan? And if they don't, to say, gee, it'd be a good idea to, for the employer to talk to a benefits consultant or me about installing a long-term care benefit plan. And one of the questions they could ask is, have people in the company, and people will know, who's in a caregiving situation, or who's had to leave the company or going sabbatical or given up job assignments or promotion. So ask you, do they have a long-term care benefit? Because I'll say this very quick. Younger people are not really as motivated and really don't know about long-term care plans. However, if a company does and they own a plan, and let's say even if it starts at $1,500 or $2,000 a month, and cost them $35, $40, $50 a month at most. If they kept that plan for 50 years, assuming that they don't need it till their 70s or 80s, and they're paying and they'll pay the same premium, and they have a cost of living. What a great investment. They probably never have to buy another plan on top of it. It's like a it is a really good investment. For something that you might, if you keep it, because assuming your income grows, that's coffee money or beer money so as time goes on, you can still buy beer, you can still buy coffee, and you can still keep your long-term care plan.
Yeah.
Let me just also say, one of the differences is if you own a long-term care plan from your company, it's portable. You can take it with you.
Yeah. Well, Raymond, with that, we need to close up shop today. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for being on the Ask Good Questions podcast. And thank you to all of you that are listening in. And we so hope that you will take advantage of this. There will be information on my website about Raymond if you would like to contact him. And so with that, thank you for joining us on the Ask Good Questions podcast. We will see you next time.
Today's episode is over, but we did ask good questions again, didn't we? Don't miss out as we broadcast live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. Join Bonita Bell-Andersen next week for more conversations with experts on finances, retirement, behavioral finance issues, health and wellness, and more. Until then, remember to ask good questions.